So today we're going to be looking at how to customize your crosshair. Let's just jump right into it. So right off the bat, we see your crosshair color. You can change this to anything that you want. I like cyan myself because it looks like a cool color, but lots of pros like to use yellow and red. It's really all personal preference at this point though, just like the rest of the crosshair. Now, your crosshair just shows where your gun's going to shoot. So if you like a very tiny crosshair that will show you exactly where your bullet's going to go, but not little lines outside of it to be able to judge your bloom on it, then you can take a very tiny one. But if you like seeing where you're going to bloom start to go, then you're going to want a bigger one, like the default one. So moving on to the outline opacity, you can turn this down, and this will change the opacity, obviously, of the outlines. Now, I like to keep this at 0.5. It just keeps them nice and normal. Moving on to outline thickness. This will increase the thickness of the lines. I do not recommend putting this past like a 3. It just doesn't look as good when you have very thick ones, but again, it's all personal preference. Now, the center dot gives you a little dot in the middle of your crosshair. So this can be really nice because it will show you where your gun's exactly going to shoot. So having a center dot can be very convenient. This opacity obviously just shows how transparent or non-transparent it is. Center dot thickness, you can make this dot very thick. I would not recommend putting this past like a 3 or a 4 because then it actually starts to obstruct the target you're shooting at, and that will give you a disadvantage. So moving on to the fade crosshair with firing error. Now this will start to fade away your crosshair when you start to shoot a lot and you just start to spray. So I don't recommend this because you'll start to not be able to see where to shoot. Show spectated player's crosshair. This is just a cool little feature in Valorant where you can see what other people are using as their crosshair. It's fun, and allows you to see what other people are using. It's just a cool little thing, but it won't affect your own crosshair. Now, let's look at the inner line opacity. This is how transparent the inner lines are. So I like to keep this at the base of just 0.8. It keeps them at a nice level. It's not too bright, it's not too dim, but you can again change this up just seeing how bright or not bright you want it. Now the inner line length, I would not recommend putting this past a 15 or a 10. It's nice to have little tiny short lines, but you don't want them too small either. I wouldn't put it at a 1 just because then it starts to look like a little circle. And I mean, if you like that, then sure, go ahead. But I honestly prefer just like the base of like 5 or maybe even a 4. But I would not recommend going too high or too low on this category. Staying right in the middle is generally a good idea. Now, the inner line thickness increases the inner line's thickness as it infers. I wouldn't go past a 5 or even a 3, really. It just starts to obstruct the view of your target, and that is not good. Now, movement error will increase the size of the reticle as you move. I don't recommend this, but it is good though because it can show you the total range you can shoot in while you're moving. Now, if you've got a stationary crosshair, it's just going to stay still. But if you've got your movement error turned on, you'll see the whole range. Now, it will not give you an accurate spot for where to shoot other than your center dot. So you're kind of relying on your center dot here for when you stop and start actually shooting. So I personally have movement error turned off, but then again, that is all personal preference. Firing error is when you fire, does the circle start to expand? I also like to keep this one off just because it gives you a little bit more of focusing on what you're shooting at and less focusing on your crosshair. But like I've said so many times in this video, it's personal preference. Now, your outer outline opacity. This is obviously how transparent your outer lines are. I like to keep this at like a 4 or a 2 maybe. The outer lines aren't as useful if you don't have firing error on, because the outer lines are used to show how large it is when you're starting to fire and like what the maximum possible bloom is. Now, the outer line length, you can increase this. I honestly wouldn't recommend having this very large. I don't like having outer lines, so I'm going to turn this one off, but it's all up to you. Your outer line thickness I'm going to turn this back on just so you guys can see, but if we put this at a 4, it's the thickness of the outer lines. Again, I don't recommend putting it past a 4 or a 5 because then it starts to just obstruct your target. Now, let's see, outer line offset. this is how far away your outer lines are from your crosshair. So I would not honestly use this setting this much because I don't like having outer lines, but if you like this setting, then this one is for you. Now, movement error is, again, will your outer lines move when you move? Will they start to move with you? And then firing error is, will they start to move when you fire? So if you like a little reticle like this, you need to have your outlines on. Then you want your center dot on as well. And if you even don't want the center dot, you can turn the center dot off and say you just want little lines. Then we just need to make the offset even lower. So let's see. When we look in the inner lines offset, we currently have it at a 3. But if we wanted it right there, then all we have is this little dot that'll show us exactly where to shoot. So this, again, I've said this so many times, but it all comes down to personal preference. Whatever you like in a crosshair, that's what you should use. If you did enjoy this video or it helped you out in any way, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. It would help out the channel greatly. I'll be coming out with lots more content just like this in Valorant. I'll also be making content on other games soon as well, so please stay tuned for that. I hope you enjoyed and have an amazing day. I'll see you in the next one.